Have you ever made a decision, known it was the right decision, and then spent the next 3 days questioning it anyway? You thought it through, made a choice, sent a message, taken the action, and then something strange happens. Your mind starts looking for a mistake. What if I miss something? What if there's a better option? What if I got this wrong? Most people assume that's because they don't trust themselves. I don't think that's what's happening. In fact, I've noticed the people who second guess themselves the most are often the people with the best judgment, which raises a much more interesting question. If it isn't poor judgment, what is the mind actually searching for? Because if the mind is searching for something, it isn't looking for a better decision. It's looking for something that no decision can ever provide. And until you see that, the second guessing never really stops. This video isn't about becoming more confident. It's about understanding why capable people still can't settle after making good decisions. Because the problem isn't your judgment. It's what your nervous system does with uncertainty once the decision has already been made. Because those are two completely different problems. And if you try to solve one as though it's the other, the loop never ends. Because here's what's actually happening. When a decision is made, or a message is sent, or a choice is committed to, there is always some level of uncertainty remaining. That's not a problem. It's just the nature of decisions. But for an analytical mind, uncertainty registers as a signal, not loudly, just as a quiet prompt. Have you checked everything? Is there something you missed? Could this have been better? And the system responds the way it always responds, with analysis. It reviews the decision, considers the options, looks for the thing that might have been missed. And that feels like it needs to be done. It feels like thoroughness. But what it's actually doing is attempting to reach a level of certainty that decisions structurally cannot provide. Because certainty, complete, total certainty, doesn't exist at the end of this process. It never arrives. And so the analysis continues, looking for something that isn't there. And this is where it becomes important to understand the loop. The system interprets uncertainty as a potential threat, not dramatically, just as something that needs to be resolved before it can settle. And so it generates analysis, more review, more consideration, and more checking. And the analysis produces some relief, but only temporary. A brief sense of having covered the ground. But underneath that clarity, there is still uncertainty, because there is always still uncertainty. And so the system registers it again and generates more analysis, and the loop continues to run. What makes this specific to analytical minds is that the analysis is genuinely good. The review is thorough, the consideration is precise, the check-in is accurate, but it's trying to solve the wrong thing, because the goal is certainty, and certainty isn't available. What's available after a good decision has been made is trust, and trust is not something the analytical loop produces. Analysis and trust are different processes, and when the system only knows how to run one of them, the loop has no exit. What's available is trust, and trust requires a different process entirely. You might recognize this in the small things. A message sent and then reread. Not because something was wrong, but because the system needed to check. A decision made and then returned to, reviewed from a different angle, as if a decision might look different on the second or third check. You might recognize it in the research that goes past the point of usefulness, when enough information has been gathered to decide on a clear decision, but then the gathering of information continues anyway, because there might be one more piece, one more data point, something that finally makes the decision resolve. You might recognize it in the reassurance that doesn't really help. Someone confirms you made the right call, and there's a brief moment of relief. And then the uncertainty returns, because the reassurance came from outside, and the system needs it from inside. And underneath all of it, there's a specific feeling, knowing what to do, and still not being able to fully settle after doing it. Not because the decision was wrong, because the system hasn't learned how to settle without certainty. A confidence problem looks like this. Someone doesn't believe they are capable of making good decisions. A regulation problem looks like this. Someone makes good decisions consistently and cannot settle into them. A confidence problem is solved by evidence. A regulation problem isn't. Because the evidence already exists. The track record is there. The results are there. The proof of judgment is there. And the system still searches, still reviews, still cannot fully settle. Because the issue was never the evidence. It was never the quality of the judgment. It was the relationship between the system and uncertainty. And that relationship doesn't change through more evidence. It changes through regulation. Not because the evidence isn't there, because the system was never taught to trust it. The next time you notice the loop starting, a decision already made, being questioned over again, pause before following the analysis. Not to stop thinking, just to notice what's happening. There is a decision that has been made, and underneath it, there is uncertainty. And the system is reaching for analysis to resolve that uncertainty. Just notice that reaching without following it. And ask, not analytically, just quietly, what does the track record say about this? Not what might go wrong, not what could have been different. What does the evidence of previous decisions actually say about this one? And see if it's possible to stay with that instead of following the analysis. Just for a moment. Because this is where trust begins to develop. Not through a decision to trust more, but through the repeated practice of not following the loop when the loop starts. Over time, this changes the relationship between the system and uncertainty. Not by eliminating uncertainty. Uncertainty will always be present after a decision. That's structural. That's not going to change. But the system's response to it does change. Instead of uncertainty triggering analysis, uncertainty becomes something the system can sit with, without needing to resolve it immediately, without generating another round of reviewing. And that shift is what trust actually is. Not the absence of uncertainty, the ability to remain settled in its presence, And for an analytical mind, this is a significant shift, because the analytical capacity remains. The precision, the thoroughness, the ability to review when review is genuinely needed. But it no longer runs automatically every time uncertainty is present. It runs when it's useful, and it settles when it isn't. And that is the difference between a system seeking certainty and a system operating from trust. So, if you've built a track record that should make this easier and it hasn't, this is why. Not because your judgment is poor, not because you need more evidence, not because evidence is what's missing, but because the system learned to reach for certainty every time uncertainty was present. Uncertainty at the level the system is looking for was never going to arrive. What's available instead is trust. And that trust isn't built through more analysis. It's built through the system learning that it can settle without the certainty it's been looking for. If this is something you want to work through directly, with precision rather than more self-analysis, there is a link in the description to find out more. No pressure, just there if it's the right time. So, if you've recognized yourself in this pattern, it's worth continuing through the series, because each video builds on the last. In the next video, we go one layer deeper, because understanding that the system needs trust is one thing. Actually rebuilding the ability to trust internal signals after a long period of overriding them is something entirely different. That's what the next video is about.